At 04:17, 7 Navy SEALs entered the Karad Valley believing they were alone. They were wrong. Someone on the cliffs knew their formation, hand signals, and the distance between each man. Before sunrise, that unseen shooter would have 5 chances to kill them. Instead, every ambush waiting for the SEALs would fail. The first sign came as a dead radio. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Mercer raised one fist, and Echo 7 stopped among the black reeds. The valley was so narrow that the mountains seemed to lean over them. A strip of paling sky hung between the cliffs. Mercer touched the transmit switch clipped to his vest. Sabre, Echo 7, crossing point Grey. Only static answered. He tried again. Nothing. Their satellite link had worked on the western slope. Down here, 3,000 feet of stone closed over every signal. What Mercer had not expected was the silence ahead. No goats, cooking fires, or barking dogs. Petty Officer Noah Quinn knelt beside a flat patch of mud. Quinn was the team's tracker, a narrow-faced man who treated footprints like written confessions. He pointed to the bank. 6 men, he whispered. Maybe 8. Crossed after midnight. Heading? Mercer asked. Quinn looked toward the bend ahead. Same direction as us. Their mission depended on speed. A Vardeshi engineer named Farid Nasser had stolen the location codes for 12 mobile surface-to-air missiles. He would wait at an abandoned water station until 0620. When an enemy convoy would arrive to move him somewhere, he would never be found. Echo 7 had to reach him first and climb to an extraction point on the northern ridge. Their orders promised no aircraft, artillery, or friendly units inside the valley. Mercer signaled the team forward. They moved in 2 staggered files, Quinn and Lieutenant Aaron Pike ahead. Mercer, Corpsman Eli Brooks, Communications Specialist Ben Cade, and breachers Thomas Reed and Owen Shaw behind. None of them looked 700 feet above the riverbed. If they had, they still would not have seen the rifle resting between 2 slabs of grey stone. The shooter lay beneath dust-colored fabric, cheek against a stock worn smooth near the bolt. Through the scope, Quinn floated over a thin, illuminated cross. The rifle followed him, then settled on a thorn tree farther down the valley. Behind it, a man held a radio and detonator. The shooter did not touch the trigger. Not yet. The first ambush waited at a dry crossing where the riverbed narrowed between 2 shelves of rock. Mercer saw exactly what the enemy wanted him to see: an empty trail, a collapsed stone wall, and enough open ground to make the team hurry. Quinn stopped. Wire, he said. A nearly invisible filament crossed the path at ankle height. Reed eased forward and traced it beneath the dust. The wire did not lead to an explosive. It ran toward a cluster of metal scraps placed under the wall. Alarm, Reed murmured. They want to know when we're centered in the crossing. Mercer studied the slopes. The eastern side offered 3 firing shelves. In the west, Cade's pull camera showed an apparently empty drainage. Channel exactly where Mercer would have hidden a machine gun. He was about to send Shaw around the wall when a single sharp crack rolled across the valley. Every SEAL dropped. Buddy. Sound came from high above and behind them. A fraction of a second later, the enemy detonator flew from the observer's hand. The bullet had passed through the radio, struck the detonator, and buried itself in the tree without touching the man. The observer stared at the broken pieces, then ran. Shooter, high west. Pike called. Mercer found the flash point through his optic, but there was nothing there. No silhouette. No movement. Only wind pulling dust from a seam in the cliff. Across the kill zone, shapes rose from behind the firing shelves. The enemy gunmen had heard the shot, but their signal had never come. One fired too early. Another turned toward the fleeing observer. Their carefully timed ambush dissolved into confused bursts. Echo 7 answered with controlled fire. Within 40 seconds, the eastern shelves were quiet. The machine gun in the western drainage channel never fired at all. When Reed reached it, he found 2 men trying to clear a weapon whose feed tray had been bent by a bullet. One shot had destroyed the observer's equipment. Another had disabled the machine gun. The team had heard only one suppressed second rifle. Pike asked. Mercer shook his head. Maybe. Quinn recovered a long brass casing from beside the broken radio. It was clean and warm. He rolled it between his fingers, then passed it to Mercer. Not theirs, Quinn said. The head stamp had been filed away. Brooks looked toward the cliffs. Someone just saved us. Or moved us, Mercer replied. Mercer ordered the team east into a passage barely wide enough for one man. He kept looking up. Once he caught the edge of a tan sleeve between two rocks. When he raised his optic, it was gone. Far above, the shooter collected both casings, including the decoy near the observer. The casing in Mercer's pocket had not come from her rifle. Its filed head stamp meant deniable asset, and do not use the radio. Mercer understood the first part. He did not yet understand the second. At 04:51, Echo 7 reached a ruined shepherd's hut. Quinn found boot prints entering from the south and leaving toward the east. 12 men this time, moving fast. One print had a missing triangle in the heel. Same group as the river, he said. They've looped ahead. Cade unfolded their compact satellite terminal. I can get a signal if I climb 20 feet. Make it 10. From a ledge, he watched its indicator pulse from red to amber. He needed 30 seconds of clear sky. On the opposite mountain, the hidden shooter saw something the SEALs could not. 3 miles east, an enemy direction-finding truck had raised its antenna. Their transmission, lasting more than 12 seconds, would give it a bearing. 2 would give it a target. Cade's terminal turned green. The shooter shifted her aim. Wind crossed the valley at 9 miles per hour, then curled downward against the cliff. The antenna was too far for certainty and too important for a warning shot. She exhaled halfway down. The rifle moved less than the width of a fingernail. She fired. The bullet struck Cade's terminal above the battery and tore it from the ledge. Cade fell backward, drawing his pistol before he landed. Contact! No second shot came. Reed dragged the shattered terminal behind the hut. That was ours. I noticed, Cade snapped. Mercer inspected the hole. The round had destroyed the transmitter without touching the battery or Cade's hands. It was too precise to be an accident. Pike's expression hardened. First she saves us. Now she cuts our comms. You saw her, Brooks asked. No, but that rifle's been pacing us for half an hour. Quinn pointed east. A thin engine note drifted through the valley and disappeared. Mercer finally understood the casing. Direction finder, he said. She's keeping us silent. Who is she? Pike asked. Mercer placed the ruined terminal in Cade's pack. Someone who knows what's ahead. They continued without transmitting. The second ambush waited inside Daria. Dawn had reached the roofs when Echo 7 entered through an irrigation ditch. Doors stood open. A kettle steamed over a blue flame. The residents had been removed minutes earlier. Mercer divided the team. Pike, Brooks, and Shaw crossed behind the houses, while Mercer took the others through a narrow market lane. Quinn froze beside a wooden cart. The same broken triangle marked the dust ahead. The enemy had crossed here twice, first toward the square and then back toward the roofs. They're above us, he whispered. A rifle muzzle appeared behind a chimney. Before Quinn could fire, the chimney exploded in a burst of stone. The enemy rifleman vanished backward. A second shot struck a hanging copper tray at the far end of the lane. The tray spun violently, flashing sunlight into a dark window. Mercer saw the machine gun behind the glass. Echo 7 fired first. The square erupted. Fighters on 3 roofs pivoted toward the cliffs, searching for the unseen shooter, and their crossfire lost its timing. Pike's element came through a stable behind them. 4 minutes later, the village was quiet. No SEAL had been hit. On the highest roof, Quinn found a hand-drawn map pinned under a loose brick. The water station was circled. 3 arrows showed approach routes, including the path Echo 7 had planned to use. Beside the northern route, someone had written a time 0536. It was 0519. 17 minutes, Pike said. They know the meeting point. Mercer looked toward the ridge. The original route followed a canyon directly to the station. It was the fastest approach, and now obviously compromised. The southern route required crossing a wide terrace. The northern route climbed beneath the cliffs and would cost them at least 25 minutes. Shaw turned over one of the fallen gunmen. The man had the missing triangle in his heel. Trackers group, he said. They won't be looping again. Quinn was staring at the map. This wasn't left for them. He lifted the paper. On the reverse side, written faintly in English, were 4 words. Blue door. Trust the dog. The village had dozens of brown doors and 1 blue. Behind it, an elderly woman sat beside a black shepherd dog. She touched 2 fingers to her heart, then pointed to the animal. Around its neck was a strip of green cloth tied in a military knot. Mercer recognized the knot. So did Pike. Scout Sniper Retention Knot, Pike said. For securing camouflage. The dog walked into the street, looked back once, and headed north. We're following a dog now, Reed asked. Mercer checked his watch. We're following the only person in this valley who's been right twice. The dog led them into a dry aqueduct, hidden beneath thorn bushes. While Echo 7 crawled north through the darkness, 20 enemy fighters occupied their original route. At 05:38, those fighters detonated charges along the empty canyon floor. The blast rolled through the aqueduct like distant thunder. The third ambush had failed without seeing a target. Pike looked upward, although several feet of stone separated them from the sky. She knew our route, the village, and the exact time of the attack. She also knew our knots, Quinn said. Cade had been silent since losing the terminal. Dowie spoke from the back of the file. There was another team in this sector. Mercer stopped crawling. What team? Saber kept it compartmented. A two-person reconnaissance cell inserted 11 days ago to confirm Nassar's identity. Their extraction failed. Names, Cade hesitated. Warrant Officer Caleb Ward and Chief Maya Vance. Pike knew the second name. Vance was a sniper instructor at Crane. Best wind reader I ever saw, Mercer said. Mercer had met Maya during a joint course 6 years earlier. Quiet, patient, and almost impossible to surprise, she could watch a hillside for 10 hours and name the one stone that had moved. 3 days ago, she had been listed as missing. Cade lowered his voice. Saber assessed both operators killed. Another blast shook dirt from the aqueduct roof. Mercer began crawling again. Saber assessed wrong. They emerged half a mile from the water station at 5:57. Nassar was not there. The station held a concrete reservoir and rusted pump house. Its door had been forced. Blood marked the floor, but there was no body. Beside an overturned chair lay 12 supposed missile coordinates. Cade examined them. These are copies. The authentication marks are wrong. Mercer found a small recorder under the chair. When he pressed play, a frightened voice filled the room. If the Americans arrive, tell them I moved the codes. The men with red bands found my family. I had no choice. The real list is at the old relay tower. I will wait there until sunrise. The recording ended. The old relay tower stood across the valley beyond an abandoned quarry and 600 feet of exposed switchbacks. Sunrise was 28 minutes away. Reed looked at the blood. Could be forced. It is, Quinn said. He pointed to the slips of paper. Their edges were perfectly aligned. Our terrified man doesn't arrange 12 pages before he runs. Mercer played the message again. On the third sentence, a faint metallic sound clicked behind Nassar's voice. Pike recognized it. Mortar site. The water station was not the meeting point anymore. It was an aiming reference. Move, Mercer ordered. The first mortar struck the reservoir as Echo 7 cleared the pump house. Concrete fragments swept across the yard. The second landed short. The third walked toward the dry channel where the team had taken cover. Above them, Maya Vance had a choice. She could see the mortar crew on a shelf nearly 900 yards south. She could also see 6 fighters moving behind Echo 7 through the quarry. If she engaged the mortar, the ground team would reach Mercer. If she engaged the ground team, the next mortar would land inside the channel. Her spotter, Caleb Ward, would once have solved the problem with her. But Ward lay beneath a cairn 3 valleys west. Killed during their second night, when the direction-finding truck brought artillery onto their position. For 9 days, Maya had carried his radio, his notebook, and the final 7 rounds from his rifle. She had 4 of her own remaining, 11 shots for a valley full of armed men. She centered the mortar gunner in her scope. The range was long, the air unstable, and the target partially obscured. Maya did not need to hit the gunner. She fired into the white aiming stake planted 2 feet beside him. The stake snapped. The gunner flinched and turned. The mortar team's next round dropped into the tube, while the assistant tried to correct the displaced sight. It launched at the wrong elevation. The round struck the quarry behind the 6 advancing fighters. Stone and dust poured down the slope, cutting them off from Echo 7. The 4th ambush had destroyed itself. Mercer heard the distant rifle crack and then the mortar impact. He did not need Quinn to explain it. Vance is shaping the battlefield, he said. With how many rounds? Brooks asked. Nobody answered. They climbed toward the relay tower. The black dog appeared again at the first switchback. This time it carried no message. It stood across the trail and growled. Quinn crouched beside it. A hair-thin wire ran from a stone near its front paw into a crack in the mountain. Reed followed the wire and found an explosive charge buried beneath the switchback. Then he found another. The entire trail had been prepared to collapse. The dog had stopped them 3 steps before the trigger. "Trust the dog," Pike whispered. A red cloth strip fluttered from a higher path leading away from the switchbacks. Maya had marked an alternate route through an old drainage tunnel. Inside the tunnel, Mercer found proof that she had been there. A shallow sleeping hollow, 2 empty water packets, and a page torn from Ward's notebook. It listed enemy positions, radio windows, patrol times, and a final observation written the night before. Nassar moved to Relay Tower. Family held in lower quarry. Extraction team will be diverted. Do not let them take the switchbacks. Below it, in a different hand, Maya had written, Ward Kiaya, mission continues. For the first time, Mercer understood the full cost of the invisible protection above them. Maya was not part of a planned overwatch element. No commander had placed her on the ridge. She had been abandoned, hunted, and officially declared dead. Yet she had spent her last ammunition clearing a path for men who did not know she was alive. "We bring her out with us," Brooks said. Mercer folded the page. "We bring everyone out." At 0631, Echo 7 reached the relay tower. Nassar was alive, kneeling beside the base with his wrists bound. His wife and 2 children were held inside a lower equipment room. 12 enemy fighters occupied the tower complex. More were moving up from the quarry. The team watched from a notch 200 yards west. Pike counted positions through his optic. 2 on the roof, 4 around Nassar, at least 6 inside. Quinn studied the ground behind them. The quarry group will be here in 10 minutes. Mercer searched the surrounding cliffs. No flash, no cloth, no movement. For the first time since entering the valley, he could not feel Maya watching. Cade removed a small emergency beacon from his vest. One burst might reach Saber from this elevation. "And the direction finder," Pike said. "We need extraction." Mercer looked at the tower, Nassar, and the children visible through a broken vent. "Set it for a delayed burst." 8 minutes, Echo 7 descended. Their plan depended on silence. Shaw and Reed would enter the lower equipment room. Brooks would secure the family. Quinn and Pike would isolate the roof. Mercer and Cade would reach Nassar. They crossed the first 100 yards unseen. At 70 yards, one of the roof guards suddenly turned toward their position. He had not heard the SEALs. He was responding to a voice in his earpiece. The direction-finding truck had intercepted the beacons. Start-up handshake before the transmission was even. Sent enemy fighters pivoted toward the notch. The 5th ambush was not. The head of Echo 7. It was closing behind. Them. Gunfire struck the rocks around Mercer. The SEALs split exactly as rehearsed, but surprise was gone. Quinn and Pike were pinned below the roof. Reed reached the equipment room door and discovered it chained from the inside. The quarry fighters appeared on the western trail, cutting off retreat. Mercer shot one guard near Nassar and dragged the engineer behind a concrete block. Cade dropped beside them. 2 minutes until the beacon transmits, Cade said. "Can you stop it?" Not without going back to the notch. The enemy commander stepped onto the tower platform. He wore a red band around his arm and held a handheld radio. Beside him stood a boy no older than 10, Nassar's son, with a rifle pressed against his shoulder. The commander shouted into the valley in English, "Maya Vance! We know you are above us." The shooting slowed. Mercer felt the battle change. Every enemy position turned away from Echo 7 and toward the cliffs. "You have followed these men for hours," the commander continued. "Show yourself or the child dies first," Pike whispered over the team channel. "Do we have eyes on Vance?" "Negative," Quinn answered. Mercer searched the rock line. The commander had chosen his position carefully. A steel railing covered his torso. The boy stood directly in front of him. From the western cliffs, no clean shot existed, but Maya was not on the western cliffs anymore. After the mortar engagement, she had descended through a crack behind the relay tower and crawled into the skeleton of an old cable station. She now lay 80 yards above the commander, looking almost vertically down. Her left hand shook from dehydration. Blood had dried beneath a bandage on her thigh. In her rifle remained 1 round. The commander pulled the boy closer. "Your partner called your name before he died," he shouted. "Do you remember?" Maya remembered Ward pushing the direction finder's coordinates into her hand, then staying beside the radio, so the enemy would believe both operators remained there. Artillery arrived 37 seconds after her last glance back. For 9 days she had wanted the commander inside her scope. Now he was there. But killing him would not solve the geometry below. The boy might fall from the platform. A second fighter could fire. Echo 7 was still trapped between the tower and the quarry force. Maya moved her crosshair, away from the commander. She aimed at the relay tower's oldest support cable. The cable ran through a rusted pulley above the platform and held a 600-pound directional antenna. Years of mountain weather had eaten halfway through the steel. One bullet would not cut a healthy cable. This one was not healthy. Maya fired her last round. The cable separated. The antenna dropped and swung across the platform like a massive blade. The commander threw the boy aside and jumped backward. The antenna struck the railing, tore it free and crashed onto the western stairs. 3 fighters were knocked down. The remaining guards looked up. Echo 7 moved. Pike and Quinn cleared the roof. Reed broke the equipment room chain with a compact charge. Brooks reached Nassar's family. Mercer crossed the open concrete and pulled the boy behind. "Cover." The commander recovered near the tower door and raised his rifle toward Maya's position. Her weapon was empty. Mercer fired first. The commander fell. From the quarry trail came the sound of boots and shouted orders. At least 15 fighters were seconds away. Cade's beacon began transmitting from the notch, sending their coordinates to Saber and to every receiver in the valley. Maya stood inside the cable station. She could no longer protect the team from above, but she still had Ward's radio. She connected it to the tower's emergency amplifier, selected the enemy command frequency, and pressed transmit. In Vardeshi, she ordered the quarry force to hold position because the prisoners had been wired with explosives. The voice was imperfect, but after 9 days of listening, she knew the commander's rhythm, code words, and clipped way of ending an order. The fighters stopped below the final turn. That hesitation lasted 11 seconds. It was enough. Echo 7 moved Nassar and his family into the drainage tunnel. Quinn covered the entrance, while Reed collapsed the outer wall behind them. The quarry force reached the tower just as the passage disappeared beneath rock and dust. The 5th ambush had failed without another shot. Inside the tunnel, Mercer counted heads, 7 SEALs, Nassar, his wife. 2 children, no Maya. He handed the boy to Brooks and turned back. Pike caught his arm. "Chief, the tunnel's coming down. She's still up there. We don't know where." A figure stepped from the darkness behind them. Maya Vance looked smaller than Mercer remembered. Dust covered her face. Her uniform had been repaired with pieces of local cloth, and an empty rifle hung from one shoulder. In her hand was Ward's notebook. She looked at Echo. 7 as though finding 7 living. Men in the tunnel was a calculation that had finally produced the right answer. "You took your time," she said. Mercer stared at her. Then at the rifle. "How many rounds did you have?" "Enough." Quinn opened his hand. The filed casing from the first crossing lay in his palm. "This yours?" Maya shook her head. "Ward's. He filed every casing before a mission. Said no one deserved free intelligence." She took it gently and placed it in a pocket beside the notebook. Behind them, the tunnel roof cracked. "Conversation later," Pike said. They climbed at 0704. The team emerged above the valley into hard morning sunlight. 2 rescue helicopters were approaching from the north, guided by the beacon's final burst. Enemy gunmen appeared on the ridge below, but they were too late and too far away. Maya watched the first helicopter settle onto the rocks. She did not move toward it. Mercer stepped beside her. "Ward?" She looked west toward 3 valleys hidden behind the mountains. "I marked the location. We'll bring him home." For the first time, the control left her face. Not much, just enough for Mercer to see what 9 days alone had cost. She nodded once. Nassar's family boarded first. Then Brooks, Reed, Shaw, and Quinn. As Pike moved toward the second aircraft, he stopped beside Maya. "We thought there were no friendly units in the valley," he said. Maya looked down at the winding riverbed, the village roofs and the 5 places where men had waited to kill them. "There weren't," she replied. "There was just me." The official report credited Echo 7 with recovering Nassar. his family, and the coordinates without an American casualty. It described enemy resistance as repeatedly mistimed and mentioned rifle support without identifying its source. Maya Vance's name remained classified. 3 weeks later, Mercer attended a private ceremony in a windowless room. There were no cameras and no speeches. Ward's notebook rested beside a folded flag. Maya stood at the back, uncomfortable in a clean uniform. Afterward, Mercer gave her a small wooden box. Inside were 11 pieces of brass recovered from the valley, some found by Echo 7, others collected later near the firing positions. Every head stamp had been filed smooth. Maya counted them twice. There should be 12, she said. Mercer placed the final casing in her palm. It was the one Quinn had carried from the first crossing. The casing Ward had prepared before his final mission. There are, Mercer said. Months later, Echo 7 still argued over exactly when they first realized someone was above them. Quinn said it was the warm casing. Pike said it was the shot through Cade's terminal. Brooks believed it was the dog waiting beside the blue door. Mercer knew the truth. They had not realized it until the relay tower, when the last bullet was used not for revenge, but to open a path for everyone else. That was what separated a hidden shooter from a guardian. A shooter waited for a target. A guardian watched the whole battlefield and chose who made it home.